Welcome back, everyone. We've had a few rainy and gloomy days here in Denver over the past week. That hasn't slowed us down on these basement digouts though, just because you don't get weather in the basement, so it's been pretty nice. So anytime we get some kind of weather here in Denver and we got basement digouts going on, kind of nice because we're able to push forward with those when the other jobs kind of stop and we have to wait for the weather to kind of clear up and get a little nicer. The guys have been hard at work here at our basement digout, as you can see. All the stuff we got going on here. They're starting to bring in all the necessary materials for the footers. So you can see that they have some of their excess concrete and stuff that they've been pouring out here. We got wood for all the forms, the vapor barrier, very important. And of course, it's all nice and muddy because of all the weather we've been getting. Making our way back here. So we got some really good comments on last week's video just regarding a whole bunch of stuff. So we want to answer some of your questions in this week's video. And if you have any questions, please leave them down below. But this comment comes from Tyler. We'll pop it up on the screen right now. But he was just referring to the conveyor systems and pretty much more intricate and in-depth detail on these systems. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit about our conveyor system and then give you some insight into just everything there is about conveyors if you're looking to do a job like this. To specify a little bit more in terms of detail on the conveyor systems that we use, such as brands, pricing, all that kind of stuff before making a purchase on one of these. Because if you're doing this basement and you're a homeowner, you don't want to buy a conveyor belt that's kind of, excessive, but these are things that you can rent from some rental places, and it's hard to give specifics on certain things just because every area is different, whether you're from Houston, whether you're from Miami. But here in Denver, we use Easy Lift. These are some of the ones that we own. We don't really rent anymore just because we do so many of these that we know that we're going to need conveyors all the time. But what we use is an Easy Lift. You can see that right here. This is one of the best ones that we've been working with. It's just so lightweight, and you can see by the truss system that it's pretty open, and that makes it easy to maintain as well. So it's really easy to get to this stuff. If our conveyor was to break or we have any issues with it, it's really easy to take everything apart and maintenance it. In terms of pricing, here in the Denver area, we're looking about around $300 per day for a conveyor rental, which isn't too bad, all things considered, if you take into account how fast you're easy to pump out material versus, like we said last week, the bucket way. And then another key takeaway from this conveyor system that we use with the Easy Lift, you can see the kind of height of each ridge that this has on here. We tend to do a lot of vertical basements because we're going down to 10 feet. And as you can assume, a 10 feet drop is pretty steep, especially for a kind of mid-sized conveyor like this. So it's going to be angled at a pretty steep angle. So having these nice deep buckets allows us to catch a lot of dirt. So that way it's not just falling back down as it goes up. Because I know on some conveyors, especially some of the previous ones that we've had when we first started doing these, the ridges on these were pretty low and it made it kind of difficult for it to catch a lot of material at a steep angle. Is more for kind of shallow to just completely flat, just transferring dirt. That's another thing to take into consideration when going out and renting one of these or even purchasing a conveyor belt, is kind of the use case that you're going to be using it for, and then the angles as well. This specific conveyor that we have is also 12 feet long, so it's pretty decent. So like I mentioned before, if you have a 10-foot hole that you're digging for the basement floor, this goes up 2 feet, but that's perfectly vertical, so you have a little bit of leeway in terms of leaning things over. And there's also different heights as well on conveyor systems, so you could go longer, you could go shorter, whatever specifies for your basement. But we found that this 12-foot is a perfect length for most of the jobs that you've seen over the past couple of months. If you've been watching our channel, you've seen this conveyor on literally probably all the jobs, just because it's so versatile and it works so well. If you are looking to rent any kind of conveyor system for a basement dig out or any just kind of dirt removal project, what we recommend is kind of these deeper grips that they have. I don't know exactly what you call those. And then in terms of the depth of everything, if you just have shovels down there, you don't really need to worry about it being too wide, just because you're throwing hand shovels onto here anyway, so it's not like you're pumping a lot of volume on this anyway. And then lastly, you do want it to be lightweight. You're probably going to be a one-man, two-man crew, and you don't want to lug around this absolute beast of a conveyor belt, so something lightweight. And then of course, length is very important depending on the specifics of your job. So I hope this breakdown of the conveyor system is a little bit helpful. Thank you, Tyler, to reaching out in the comments and providing that comment. It's really useful. We love reading that kind of stuff, and it just gives us ideas for what you guys want to see and what we should talk about. But with that said, that's going to be our recommendation on kind of a conveyor system, what you're looking at, cost basis, all that kind of stuff, and then why you should get one of these if you're planning to do any kind of dirt removal or basement dig out job yourself. I hope that was helpful in terms of the conveyor system. And then we got another really good question from Mauricio regarding HOA, permitting, all that kind of stuff, getting permission to do a basement dig out in an HOA neighborhood. So with this kind of stuff, it's hard to give specifics on just because every county, neighborhood, state is different. So the process is never going to be the same. However, we can give some pointers in terms of, getting the process going. So for something like that, you're looking at getting in contact with a general contractor who's going to actually do your whole basement dig out, and then the finishing. We just do the excavation and then the underpinning of the basement, so we don't do final product. The general contractor will get all the permits, do all that stuff that's necessary in terms of the bureaucracy side of things, and then we just come in and do that. In terms of getting permits and stuff, you'll need to get in contact with an engineer to kind of lay out a plan for your basement. As I mentioned before, every kind of county and job is different. So in terms of a to-do list, first thing would just be getting approval from your HOA. So whether that's going to an HOA meeting, reaching out to your HOA via email, that kind of stuff. And then if they give you approval, it's just like any other typical extension to a home or anything like that. You want to get your permits in place. You want to get an engineer, a general contractor that'll be handling the work. But I hope that helped. And thank you so much for leaving all the comments, guys. In next week's video, we'll address some more comments. So if you have anything that you want to ask, leave it down below and we'd love to talk about it. But with that said, we're gonna go ahead, hop in the basement and check out everything that they're doing this week. So you can see here, the main room has been excavated. Now they're just working on getting all these footers nice and set up. And then like last week, you can see that we can show the different stages of this because I have some fully poured and then some fully formed ones here, and then the vapor barrier and rebar section. So let's go ahead and check those out. So you can see we pour the footer slab first, and then once that's cured, we'll come in and then we'll form up the footer wall, and then that'll get poured separately. So you can see on the forms we have the cutouts here, and then this is where we pour in the concrete, and then once this is all cured, we have this section we're gonna knock off with a hammer later on, so it's nice and flush with everything else. You don't want this sticking out. Here's another one of those wood forms, and then this one is gonna get ready to get poured. And as you can see, just like before, that's what we have on the inside. All the way from the corner here, you can see just how much room has been opened up from this basement dig out so far. And hopping into our time lapse, you can see pretty similar to last week, just a lot more excavation and then getting those footer holes ready. And then this week they actually started to pour the footers, so you can see them here using the bagged concrete in a wheelbarrow and then just mixing that around. And once they got it all mixed together, as you've seen from the forms in the video, we have that little opening at the top where they just pour it in, and then they make sure that there's no real air or pockets inside of there. They'll hit it with a vibrator, or they'll just smack the form and make sure that it's nice and settled. And they can generally tell because it sits at the top and has that overhang like we've seen that they'll have to knock off with a hammer once it's cured and they've taken off the form. But there's something very important I want to mention, that this is all for entertainment purposes, so we've been getting a lot of questions on how to do basement digouts yourself. This is something that we don't really recommend you do by yourself because it is a lot of work, as you can see here from our crew. And we do make it look easy on the YouTube videos, but there is a lot of planning that goes into these in terms of the engineering, soil conditions, if the house can even support this kind of stuff in the surrounding area, that kind of thing. We don't recommend doing these by yourself, like I said, and this is for entertainment at the end of the day, so we hope you guys enjoy it from that. So don't take anything you see here and try to implement it on your own jobs. We always recommend having professionals do this for you because at the end of the day, it is a huge safety concern because you do have a whole house on top of you, and something could go extremely bad if you miss a step or avoid doing something the proper way. We do hope that there is some things to take away from this video, so if you ever have these done by a professional crew, you can kind of tag along and understand the processes that they're doing and stay informed on the kind of time frame of the job, right? What stage they're in, it kind of estimate when they'll be done, that kind of thing. So just to reiterate, this is for entertainment purposes only, so please don't try to do this at home by yourself without the proper tools and all that kind of stuff, or without consulting a professional. But hopping back into the time lapse, you can see that they formed up all those footers and they got all their rebar in place, making quick work of the footer holes. This is probably the part of the project that goes by the fastest just because there's not that much dirt to excavate, and then when you have the ready mix bags and a large crew, everything gets done really fast. And switching camera angles here, that left wall you see we haven't touched yet. We're going to be saving that for when all these footers on the right side are finished. Then we'll start to excavate because that is the center of the home. So that's the place with all the most pressure and stuff. So we want to save that for last once we got this nice and sturdied up around the edge. Overall, this has been a really productive week and we're starting to see the final product come together. But that's going to take us to the end of the time lapse here. I hope you guys enjoyed that time lapse, and I hope you enjoyed the video. We plan on doing a little bit more of those Q&A sections where we answer some of your comments from the comment section. So if you have anything that you want answered, go ahead and leave it down below. We'll try to answer it to the best of our ability. With that said, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, like I said, and we'll see you next week.